Hey, do you want your Mercedes engine running forever? Then this video is for you. Hello, my name is Elvin, and today's episode I'm gonna share some tips on how to make sure your Mercedes engine never fails and virtually runs forever. I'm approaching 100,000 problem-free, failure-free miles on my 2007 Mercedes E63, and we're gonna be talking mostly about the E63 engine, M156 engine, but this video really applies to pretty much any Mercedes engine or all engines in the world. So this video is structured in a way where I'll start with the most obvious things, and then I'll go on to the things that pretty much nobody talks about or things you likely didn't know. So I promise by the end of this video, if you stick around all the way, there's gonna be a benefit for you. So M156, one of the greatest AMG engines ever. This particular one in my car is reaching 100,000 miles or 160,000 kilometers, error-free, failure-free. And in my mind, that's an accomplishment that's impressive enough for me to share these tips with you guys so you know what steps you can take to prolong the life of your engine. The first thing and the most obvious one is the frequent oil changes. I know it sounds obvious, and yet a lot of people fail to do so. I change my oil on this engine every 3,000 miles or about 5,000 kilometers. I know some of you might say, Elvin, wait, that's way too frequent. At least for the M156, that's what I prefer doing. And that in my mind is one of the reasons why I have minimal wear on this engine. If you know this engine, then you may know that the top end of this engine is somewhat weak and it can suffer from issues such as the camshaft and lifter wear or cam adjuster wear. Now 3,000 miles might be a little too frequent for less sporty engines, but for M156 specifically, AMG engine, 3,000 miles in my mind is the best interval. I recommend against following the manual or even the labels on the oil bottles that say that you should change your oil every 15,000 miles. That's ridiculous. And think about it, that same oil brand, the same label in Europe says 15,000 kilometers. In the US, it says 15,000 miles. You know that's a big difference. Inevitably, there are gonna be some oil scientists in the comments saying that this is all wrong, this is all stupid, and oil lasts for whatever, you never need to change your oil. Do whatever is the best for you. I'm just here to share what I have done to make sure that my engine is as healthy as it could be. The second tip related to oil change is the oil additives. Do use additives with each oil change. I know some people in the comments again are gonna say additives don't work, it's just a snail oil. Whatever makes you happy. I have been adding additives. Specifically, I've been adding Ceratec from Liquimoly and MOS from Liquimoly, as well as Motor Coat. I've actually had better experience with Motor Coat compared to Ceratec. Oil temperature stays lower than when using Liquimoly products. I'm gonna drop links to those products in the description box down below. If you are interested, go check them out later. One more tip related to oil changes is to keep your oil level at the maximum level. This is especially important on an M156 that basically suffers from oil starvation. The reason that the top end of this engine, like premature cam wear and the lifter wear happen, is for two reasons actually. One is just a poor material choice by AMG specialists. Let's admit they could have made those metals a little sturdier, better, but there is a way to prevent that premature wear from happening. And you do that by lubrication, right? Like by lubricating, making sure that your top end is well lubricated at all times. So I like keeping my oil level at the maximum level to ensure adequate amount of oil supply and lubrication at startups. You do not want to wait even half a second for the oil to build up and go all the way up. If you are lower on oil, that's gonna take a little longer than if you are full at oil. So I always make sure that my engine oil is at the maximum level. The manual says that the engine, depending on your driving style, can consume up to 0.9 quarts of oil every 600 miles. That is a lot, isn't it? So that's why you have to make sure that you check the oil level very frequently. Change your air filters at least once a year. I actually change it twice a year, shortly after the winter, because I live in New England and there's like salt everywhere. So I change it after winter to make sure that the winter salt goes away. And I also change it after the springtime when everything is blooming, blossoming, and there's too much pollen in the air. Each time I pull the filter out after spring, it's basically full of green stuff. It's colored in green when it's supposed to be colored yellow.
Before we move to the next tip, guys, check out the sponsor of today's video, FitCams. FixCams makes highest quality dash cams that integrate into your car without ruining its OEM look. They have brand new methods for power, from rear view mirror with hidden wiring and easy installation with the method of plug to plug. No need to remove a pillar and connect the car fuse box. We recently installed their camera on my buddy's S5, and installation took 5 minutes. All we had to do was to remove the plastic behind the rear view mirror, plug the wire into the factory socket, and done. Video quality is superb, and it comes with easy-to-use phone app too. Use the link in the description to get 8% off.
Never ever send it before it reaches the operating temperature. Wait until it reaches at least 80 degrees Celsius or 180 degrees Fahrenheit if I did the conversion right. I always wait to make sure that it reaches at least 100 degrees Celsius, and then I give it a little more time for the transmission to warm up before I floor it. Change your belt and the pulley. If the belt goes out, it's gonna take out a bunch of accessories, potentially even your the radiator with it. So I made sure that I changed my belts and pulleys preventively. Next tip, change your injectors and spark plugs. You must absolutely do that. There is no specific maintenance like interval given in the manual, but my recommendation is to change the spark plugs at least every 40,000 miles or 50,000 miles, because unfortunately on M156, and so is on M157 even, it seems to be a case with the Mercedes, injectors may get stuck open, potentially causing hydrolocking of the engine. In the best case scenario, you're gonna have misfires. In the worst case scenario, you're gonna lose your engine. So spark plug and injector replacement preventatively is a must in my mind. Next, invest in a catch can. If you have an M156 engine, then chances are you know that the PCV valve does not do its job really well. I have changed PCV valves. I recommend everybody change their PCV valves because over time, with the age, they get old, they crack, they don't work as designed. But even if they do, when they do work as designed, they still let a lot of like gases and oil pass through and get inside the intake manifold. Now, some of it obviously flows with the air through the valves and burns in the chamber, but a good amount of oil fills the intake manifold from inside. If you ever open your intake manifold, you will see it's covered. It has a good amount, like 150, 200 milliliters up to of oil. It's just like a solidly covered with oil inside. That's not too much of an issue until it is. What happens over time, that oil and grime get to the throttle bodies and may potentially cause problems to the throttle bodies where the flaps will not be able to fully open and close and work as designed. So invest in a catch can. This one is not a must. This one is just a recommendation. I bought a catch can from 63 Motorsports. I'm not affiliated. This is not a sponsored announcement. Now let's move on to the next tip. Drive it like you stole it. Occasionally. Under the right circumstances where the speed limit allows, downshift the transmission using the left paddle shifter and make the RPMs go higher, and then just drive very aggressively and let the transmission rev all the way up to 7200 RPM and go through gears, first, second, third, fourth, whatever the speed limit is. The reason you have to do it is because these engines are made to run, man. These engines are made to scream. They are made to rev. When you drive it like a grandmother, you are not letting enough air to flow through it. You are not letting that air to wash away the oil and grime we spoke about earlier from inside your intake manifold to get into the chamber and burn and get out of your exhaust. So that's why every once in a while you want to make sure that you drive these cars hard. I don't know how to explain it, but these engines love to be driven. So every once in a while, drive it like you mean it. My final tip for you guys is to always keep RPMs between 2,000 and 3,000. As you may know, M156 specifically likes rushing to the highest gear, especially in comfort setting. You are driving like 50, 40 miles an hour, and the transmission shifts all the way up to 6th, even 7th gear. Your RPMs when cruising on a highway, 75 miles an hour, it's always at about like 1,300 RPM. That's not enough. That's not adequate RPM to create enough oil pressure, in my mind. The normal oil pressure, by the way, is between 1 to 3 bars, but you don't want to be at 1 bar. You want to be like in the middle. And to achieve that oil pressure, adequate oil pressure, you have to rev it. Remember, the oil pump in your car is chain driven. We don't have some like fancy, like electrically assisted oil filters. Oil pumps. Oil pump in M156 and in most AMGs, as far as I know, is driven by the chain. So the higher your RPMs, the faster the chain rotates and the more oil pressure you have. Issues related to top end, like I spoke about earlier, are related to oil starvation, not having enough oil. I mean, that's one of the reasons. I like to believe that keeping your RPMs between 2 and 3,000 RPMs, you are actually helping the engine to lubricate better. Again, if you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. There's gonna be some oil scientists saying otherwise, but that's what I believe. That's what I've been doing for the last 70,000 miles. The engine is about to reach 100,000 miles, and it's been absolutely error and trouble free. I actually, when I replaced head bolts and I opened my valve covers, my cams and lobes were in good condition. So this is not an expert advice. This is just tips on what I've been doing. But when you are on a highway or when you are cruising at 50, 60 miles an hour consistently, don't let it sit. Don't let the RPMs sit too low. I always put the car in the manual mode, use the left paddle shifter to just drop it one gear so that I'm in the 2 and 3,000 RPM range. That obviously will hurt your gas mileage. That's not good for the environment. The reason why this transmission rushes up is for the emissions and environment reasons. But this is an old car anyway, and I bought 6.2 liters of natural gas with a V8, so I guess I'm not too environmentally friendly to start with. Okay, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if there are any things you would like to add to the list or any things that you disagree with me. Let's have some discussions in the comments, and I'll see you in the future episodes.